Ethan's day had already been rough, and it wasn't even noon. His shift as a delivery driver was supposed to be simple: pick up food from one of the city's fanciest restaurants and deliver it to the customer. But nothing ever stayed simple when you were constantly reminded of your place in the world. His mother had been battling illness for months, and the hospital bills weighed heavier on him every day. He had quit college to work multiple jobs, and while he dreamed of one day returning, reality was a relentless reminder that survival came first. The restaurant, La Petite Maison, gleamed with luxury. Its marble floors shone, and the smell of fresh bread and exotic spices filled the air. But for Ethan, the elegance only made him feel more out of place. He walked up to the counter, cap pulled low, waiting for the order he needed to deliver. Behind the counter stood Mr. Sullivan, the restaurant's general manager. A middle-aged man with slicked-back hair and a sharp suit, Sullivan prided himself on maintaining the restaurant's elite reputation. When he spotted Ethan, a scowl formed on his face. "You must be the delivery boy," Sullivan said, dragging out the words like they were an insult. "I hope you didn't touch anything on your way in." Ethan looked up briefly and nodded. He was used to comments like that. "I'm just here to pick up an order." Sullivan smirked, turning to one of the kitchen staff. "Hurry it up. Let's get this boy out of here before someone important sees him standing around." The staff exchanged uncomfortable glances but followed orders. Sullivan wasn't just cruel, he had power, and everyone knew it. As Ethan waited, he tried to focus on his breathing. He told himself this job was temporary. The manager's words didn't matter. What mattered was earning enough to keep his mom's treatment going for another month. But just as the food bag was handed to him, Sullivan leaned over the counter and whispered, "Make sure you don't drop it, kid. I'd hate for you to mess up something that costs more than you probably earn in a week." Ethan felt the sting of those words, but he clenched his jaw and walked out without saying a word. Tears threatened to fall, but he swallowed them down. He wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing him break. That evening, Ethan sat in his small apartment, scrolling through job listings. The sound of his mother's cough echoed from the bedroom, and he felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He needed to do more. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a text from his father. Ethan stared at the message for a moment before reading it. "Come to the restaurant tomorrow morning. Don't be late." Ethan's father, a successful investor, had always encouraged him to stand up for himself. But Ethan hadn't told him about today's humiliation. He didn't want to seem weak. Still, when his father asked him to show up, he knew better than to say no. The next morning, Ethan arrived at La Petite Maison, but this time he wasn't wearing his delivery uniform. His father had sent a car to pick him up, and when he stepped out in a tailored suit, heads turned. The staff who had ignored him yesterday now stared, confused and curious. Sullivan, standing near the entrance, nearly choked on his coffee when he saw Ethan. What are you doing here?" Sullivan stammered. Ethan didn't answer. He walked past the manager and entered the private dining area where his father was waiting. A team of executives stood by, discussing the restaurant's future. Ethan's father turned to him with a warm smile. "Glad you made it, son. Today's a big day." Sullivan, still trying to process the scene, followed them inside. He tried to act like he belonged, but the tension in the room was suffocating. Ethan's father cleared his throat and addressed the group. "As of today, our company has officially acquired La Petite Maison. My son, Ethan, will be overseeing operations alongside me." The silence that followed was deafening. Sullivan's face turned pale. His mind raced, replaying every insult he had thrown at Ethan. Suddenly, the delivery boy wasn't someone he could mock without consequences. Ethan looked directly at Sullivan. "I'd like to review the staff records," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Starting with the management team." Sullivan tried to recover. "Ethan, I didn't realize—" "You didn't realize what?" Ethan interrupted. "That the person you humiliated yesterday would be sitting across from you today?" Sullivan's mouth opened, but no words came out. The other staff members watched in stunned silence as Ethan continued. "For years, I've worked jobs like this, jobs where people like you think it's okay to treat others like they're beneath you. But what you don't understand is that the people you step on are the same people who keep this place running." The room remained still. the weight of Ethan's words sinking in. Sullivan looked down, his arrogance crumbling. But Ethan wasn't finished. "I'm not here to fire you," he said, surprising everyone. "That would be too easy. Instead, I want you to understand what it feels like to be on the receiving end of disrespect." Ethan's father handed him a document. "This outlines the changes we'll be making to the restaurant's management structure," Ethan explained. "You'll no longer be the general manager. From now on, you'll work under someone who knows how to treat people with dignity." Sullivan's face turned red, a mix of anger and humiliation boiling beneath the surface. But there was nothing he could do. His power was gone. As the meeting ended, Ethan walked toward the exit, his father by his side. "I'm proud of you," his father said. "You handled that better than I would have." Ethan smiled, but it wasn't about revenge. It was about change. He had been given the chance to break the cycle, to show that kindness and respect weren't weaknesses, they were strengths. And as he stepped outside into the morning sun, he knew this was just the beginning of something greater. Today, he wasn't just a delivery boy. He was a man who had reclaimed his power, not through vengeance, but through integrity.